Have you ever gone by an industrial plant site and thought to yourself, what are they making in there? Are there any dangerous chemicals? What are they? What would we do in case of an accident? Would my family be warned in time? You are not alone. More and more people have become concerned about hazardous chemicals. Your community now has some powerful legal tools to help obtain information about chemicals in your area and to be prepared for accidents. The following program provides an overview of the new law and your new rights under it. Further information and phone numbers are included at the end of the program.
Hey, Nan, look, you answered that ad.
I shouldn't have done that. It was a mistake.
Well, what have we done to change your mind?
Nothing.
This is a Channel 5 special report.
We have an on-the-scene news report about a chemical accident in Fairmont.
Mom, that's right near school.
Today, there was a chemical fire at the Venerable Plastics plant. A railroad tank car was backing into a siding for offloading into a storage tank when one of the transfer lines on the tank car burst and the chemical acrolein spilled. About 3,000 to 5,000 pounds of the chemical were released. Vapors from the spilled liquid caught fire and ignited the chemicals, which then engulfed the tank car.
The engineer and one other worker were killed in the accident. 5 other plant employees are undergoing treatment for exposure to vapors. No one outside the plant was injured. There was an evacuation of a residential neighborhood and 2 schools. The fire has now been brought under control.
As many as 200 people were killed in India last night when they breathed poisonous gas leaking from a Union Carbide insecticide factory.
Remember Bhopal, India? This and other accidents across our country have shown community leaders and residents that this could happen to them anywhere, at any time. On a daily basis, facilities across the country release tons of chemicals into the air, land, and water in the process of making products or chemicals for society's use. Some of these chemicals may contribute to your community's pollution problem. And no matter how many preventive measures are taken, chemical accidents and chemical releases can, and do, still occur. These accidents and releases or emissions are local. Your community must be prepared to deal with a chemical accident at a moment's notice. What do you need to do to be prepared? Information on chemicals in your area is the first ingredient. Planning and prevention are next. Congress recognized the need to change the way we address chemical hazards by passing the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act of 1986. Some states and communities had plans for responding to chemical accidents. Others already had community right to know programs. And in many ways, this new federal law builds on those state and local efforts. At the federal level, the National Response Team, a network of 14 federal agencies including the Coast Guard, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and others, had mechanisms in place for several years for cooperative efforts needed in the event of a major accident. But this law establishes a new framework in which the federal government, states and localities, and industry must work together on planning for chemical accidents and in providing information to the public so it can respond to chemical emergencies. Facilities must submit certain information regarding the presence and release of chemicals to federal, state, and local authorities. The law requires that this information be made available to the public. Congress intended to guarantee communities access to certain chemical data and encourage citizen participation to improve public safety and health. For many years, an adversarial relationship has existed between those producing and using toxic chemicals and those who may be exposed to them. Citizens in communities around the country would report strange smells from a neighboring plant or an odd taste in the drinking water. But rarely did they get satisfactory answers to their questions. The Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act makes clear for every state and community that citizens not only have the need, but the right to know which chemicals are used, stored, and emitted in your community, to the air, soil, or water. There are 4 major provisions which require industry, citizens, and all levels of government to work together. Under the emergency planning provision, governors have appointed state emergency response commissions. These commissions should include public health and environmental representatives, as well as emergency management, transportation, and others. The state commissions established emergency planning districts and appointed broad-based local committees. These are known as the local emergency planning committees. Each committee must include members of industry, transportation, police and fire departments, health organizations, public interest groups, elected officials, the news media, and the public. Together, the entire community develops a coordinated emergency response plan. The second section requires that facilities notify the federal, state, and local authorities in the event of an accidental release of certain hazardous chemicals in amounts exceeding EPA's limits. The third section requires that certain facilities must provide federal authorities, states, local communities, and fire departments with chemical information, including where and how chemicals are stored and in what quantities. The fourth section requires that certain manufacturing facilities must provide EPA and the states with information on the annual releases of more than 300 toxic chemicals. This is called the Toxic Chemical Release Inventory, often referred to as TRI. The Community Right to Know law makes available much more information about chemicals in your community than ever before. Your state and local planning committees will have lists of certain hazardous chemicals in your community. This information is provided to your committee by the facilities that use the chemicals in your area. This information is critical for planning and responses to chemical emergencies. Further, your committee can actually take actions to lower risks posed by these chemicals in your area. The chemicals on the extremely hazardous list are of primary concern because they can cause immediate toxic effects or even death, depending on the level of exposure. Your state commission should have information on these chemicals. Facilities are also required to provide a material safety data sheet on each chemical to your state and local planning commissions, as well as the local fire department. Facilities may instead send a list of the data sheets they have available and supply the data sheet itself upon request. The data sheet may be quite technical for the layperson. It's important to understand that the data sheet was originally designed as a tool to educate employees about the chemicals they work with. As a result, how this information applies to your community may be different than for industries handling chemicals every day. However, a material safety data sheet contains useful information about hazards associated with the chemical. You can consult your state and local commissions for clarification. In the event of an accident, a facility must immediately notify the state and local emergency planning commissions if there is a release of a listed hazardous substance that exceeds EPA's limits. EPA lists over 900 chemicals that are subject to this requirement. The initial report provides information necessary to speed up emergency response actions and medical attention for victims or proper precautions, such as evacuation. The facility must also make a follow-up report. Your state and local commissions will be keeping records of these accidental releases, and you can obtain these reports from them. Another source of information about chemical releases in your area are the annual reports on the 300 or so chemicals listed on the Toxics Release Inventory. Certain facilities must submit reports each year on the amounts of certain chemicals their facilities release into the air, water, or land. In general, the chemicals on this inventory are of concern because of the potential they may have for causing chronic delayed effects, such as birth defects or cancer, effects which may take years of routine exposures to develop. EPA is making chemical fact sheets on these chemicals available to the public to explain these effects. These reports are estimates of releases, not actual measurements. The emissions estimates include accidental releases as well as routine emissions which occur during normal operation at the facility. This information is sent to EPA in Washington, D.C., and to the state office designated by your governor. Many companies are also providing this information to their local emergency planning committees. The purpose of this reporting requirement is to inform the public and government officials about annual releases of toxic chemicals into the environment. By studying the annual pattern of releases and factoring in other information on chemicals, your local committee and other government officials can use data from the Toxics Release Inventory to better understand and address the specific community-related toxic chemical issues as they arise. Congress required that information on the Toxic Chemical Release Inventory be made available to the public through computer communications. The database is available through the National Library of Medicine for a fee. Information from other existing health and safety databases can be used to expand what is known about any given chemical on this inventory. All of the community right-to-know information taken together provides the chemicals profile of your community. By considering this information, your state and local planning commissions can take collective action to reduce risks from potentially harmful chemicals. Significant steps have been taken to disclose information about chemicals in your area. Manufacturing facilities across the country reported their routine chemical emissions and accidental releases for the first time in 1988. As a result, a number of companies say that they will be taking voluntary measures to reduce emissions. There is much to learn about chemicals and preventing chemical accidents. Research into the causes of accidents and the understanding of chemical hazards is progressing. As a result, new technologies and facility emergency planning are being used to prevent accidents. Regarding chemicals themselves, there are still many gaps in our knowledge about how chemicals act in the environment, the long-term effects of chemicals on humans, and other factors. Federal and state agencies are continuing to collect and evaluate data on chemicals in the environment and their effects on humans. Careful research requires a significant amount of time in order to increase our certainty about causes and effects of chemical problems. In some cases, this can take many years. In the meantime, experts in various fields are asked to make difficult judgment calls on specific and urgent chemical risk situations. In solving some problems, it may be clear what to do. Other problems may be more complex, include more factors to consider, and involve more uncertainty. Today's society is complex and technically advanced. Our advancement is due in part to the innovations brought to us by chemicals used in the home, the workplace, and in medicine. In many ways, ours is a society dependent on chemicals. A cooperative effort is needed among state and local authorities, industry, emergency and health personnel, the federal government, and you, the citizen, to decide about the acceptability of any risks associated with chemicals. Decisions about chemical risks are sounder when your community shares the power. People learn more and assess what they learn more carefully if they exercise some real control over the ultimate decision. The goal of the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know law is to enlist your help so that you and experts in your community are working together to figure out how great the risk is and what to do about it. Your community does have options. These options might include making zoning changes, relocation of facilities, reducing chemical inventories at the site, or improved training of workers or healthcare professionals in your community. The Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act gives you the opportunity to know about chemicals in your community and gives you a way to deal with them. But it's up to you to use it.
That news report was really scary.
Yeah. Well, these days that kind of accident can happen anywhere.
Well, do we have any sort of plan for reacting to this?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I read an article in the paper just the other night about a community and government group that's developing plans for reacting to chemical emergencies. Let's just hope we never have to use them here.
As a citizen, you have the right by law to know about chemicals in your community. You have the right to make your own informed decisions about whether chemicals are a threat to public health or the environment. We all are constantly learning more about how to manage chemical hazards better and to make our community safer for everyone. Working together through strong emergency planning and community right-to-know programs, we can save lives and protect health and the environment. Local environmental problems cannot be solved by the federal government alone. Effective, workable, lasting solutions depend on the cooperation and decisions of many different people in state and local government, in business enterprises, in homes, schools, and civic organizations who will use the information made available under this law. I urge you, for the sake of your family, your neighbors, and your community, to take an active role in your local emergency planning committee. Let's deal with potential chemical hazards before they become a problem. You can make a difference.